You know what's crazy? One morning I woke up and, like a cave gremlin, I was browsing around online and the first thing I saw was this. Yup, it's the collab between PGR and DMC5. At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a meme. After all, it was normal for PGR players to make a reference back to DMC every now and then, but good lord, we are eating real good. Or, we will be eating good next year. Why do we have to wait so long? Being a global player has its perks, like having clairvoyance. Looking ahead and seeing what's going on in the CN patch really helps us plan how we want to go about things with our accounts. After all, questions of whether we want to roll for one character over another in a gacha game feels like making a life decision. As overly dramatic as it may sound, it really does feel like that sometimes. I am totally not rolling for Acheron. I am sure there will be a 5-star lightning destruction character that will far outclass her in the future. Just you watch, haha! Anyway, PGR is pretty lax when it comes to building a roster, especially when it comes to power creep. Now, the reason why it's worth talking about right now is because the new update for PGR Aeon Reforged is out, and with it is Watanabe's new frame Epitaph. Watanabe Epitaph is a fire tank that is simply way better than the Sagemachina, but not only that, Epitaph also out DPSs the current main fire DPS Lee Hyperreal, so much so that he may as well solo as a fire unit. Now that does sound normal in a gacha game. Oh no, someone power crept someone else, whoop-de-doo. And yeah, Watanabe Epitaph is a must roll for all intents and purposes. But here's the thing, I'm not going to roll for him. Also, didn't I say PGR is pretty lax with this kind of thing? Well, let me explain. In PGR, we currently have 5 elements: physical, fire, ice, lightning, and dark. A 6th one will be coming in a couple patches, but for now let's focus on the 5 we currently have. The way this game operates in terms of its elements is rather simple. There are game modes that possess modifiers that dictate the strength and weaknesses of certain units. Sometimes they would affect one specific element that would benefit from those cases. On top of that, some of the units have abilities that synergizes or benefits those of the same element, which in turn maximizes the whole team's potential. This resulted in us having these mono-elemental meta team comps that you might have seen time and time again. Now, if you've been around the block long enough, you may have noticed that these teams slowly change over time. And I mean slowly. Every patch in PGR only centers around one character, meaning that we only get one character per update. So when a character comes out that power creeps another character, there won't be a dramatic change in composition or anything like that. It's just a mere replacement. That, and you also need to consider that there are 5 elemental teams, so that means that 4 of the 5 is going to be untouched when a new patch comes in. And when an A-rank patch comes in, basically nothing gets touched for the most part. So when you think about how long it takes for someone to get power crept, it's going to take a very long time. To put it into perspective, Luna Laurel has been the meta dark attacker for 2 whole years. Until finally Lamia came in and took her crown, but even so, 2 years! And you know what? This is normal, because look at Rosetta. She has been the meta physical tank since her release 2 years ago, and she's still meta now, and will be meta until the S-rank Hangying releases next year. Yeah, that's a very long time. But you get the picture, right? If you think about it, it sounds rather chill, because you don't have to worry about a character getting power crept tomorrow. If anything, these characters will have to wait in line before leaving our teams. So it's going to be a while for the meta of a certain element to circle back to itself and change. You have time. If anything, you can always choose to stick with your current set of characters and obtain the new hotness later in the future, or wait for something else that interests you. Sure, some of these characters are not going to nuke enemies like their meta counterparts, but that's okay. They're still usable and some of them are still really strong. It's not like they completely go out of commission when the new girl on the block moves in, or for this case, guy. I mean, Luna and Rosetta were still hanging around while the Gen 2 units were going ham. So yeah, when it comes to power creep, you don't necessarily have to worry about it as much in PGR compared to most other games. Then there's building a roster. Characters are easy to come by in this game given how PGR releases their characters along with the rewards you get. I have another video on it, so check it out because it's a very long explanation, but TLDR, you can almost get every single character in PGR because Crow is extremely generous. Even for Watanabe's case, you'll definitely find a way to snag him if you're not going to roll for him around this time. Or if anything, you can just randomly get him from the standard pool when he eventually ends up there. After all, the roster is rather small. Look, PGR has been out for a little more than 3 years in global, and we have a roster that is smaller than Honkai Star Rail's roster, not counting the collab characters of course. And a third of the S ranks in that roster can be obtained for free, so chances are if you play a decent amount, you might nearly fill out your roster. Yup, only in PGR where you can make your account look like a whale's account to those who aren't in the know. So, going back to Watanabe Epitaph, when we think of the timing of things, it certainly feels like Nanami got power crept after a short amount of time, at least compared to some other units. Though, let's be real here, she's been the meta fire tank for 1 whole year, she had her time in the sun. But don't worry, Nanami will return. To play Monster Hunter. Anyway, now that Epitaph is here, I'm sure we're all wondering, if you have Starfarer, is it worth picking up Epitaph? Yes, absolutely 100%. He has Shred, and the amount of Shred he has at base is currently unmatched. Okay, hang on. Let's take a step back. There's another thing to consider, and that is, for what reason would we want to follow the meta? For the most part, meta does allude to the power these units possess. I mean, look at Lamia being so insanely strong compared to Luna Laurel. But that doesn't mean Luna isn't worth using anymore. Luna Laurel is still strong enough to demolish a ton of the content. For a Gen 1 unit, she's absolutely insane. And Nanami is the same deal, and she is a Gen 2 unit. But here's the thing. When it comes to the endgame, the meta is somewhat more prevalent. The game modes that come to mind are Babel Tower, Norman Revival Plan, Phantom Pain Cage, and Warzone. But what I want to focus on is specifically Warzone, where the consideration for the meta feels almost mandatory. No, not that Warzone. Warzone is a PvE, VP game mode where you must clear 2 stage environments, each consisting of a modifier that benefits 1 element, and each stage consists of 3 combat instances. The first 2 instances for both arenas are standard clears that will yield you a static maximum score, while the final instance will yield you a score that is determined by how many waves of mobs you have cleared in a set amount of time. The more waves you clear, the higher your score will be. After you complete your clears, your score will be tabulated against other players within the same lobby, which will determine if you rank up or rank down, or stay in the same place. For the most part, yeah, it's basically PvP. In any gacha game where PvP is concerned, there are several aspects to consider. Obviously, one of them being the meta. For the case of Warzone, to rank up, skill isn't the only thing that will carry you through. It's also the team you are bringing with you to tackle the game mode. To that end, if you really want to rank up, meta is essentially non-negotiable. Follow or fall. But you know what my take is on this? Don't worry about it. You see, the other aspects to consider for PvP is also the fact that you'll be subject to some kind of RNG. Even if the brackets are somewhat balanced based on where you're at in the game or how skilled you are, sometimes the lobby you're put up with might have people who suck, or other times you might have people who are good. That's just how it is. Oh yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that in order to get black cards from Warzone, you just have to complete it, not be the highest rank or whatever. For the most part, you're just gonna get currency to buy stuff from the Warzone store. That's really it. And finally, when we talk about meta, we also want to talk about efficiency. There is much to be said about the time investment when it comes to engaging with combat activities in PGR. Truth be told, we're at a point where power creep has taken us to where units can straight up nuke a combat engagement 5 seconds flat. You tell me whether that's good or bad. For Babel Tower, Norman Revival Plan, and PP Cage, having meta teams greatly helps you in annihilating its content. There is the fact that for PP Cage, the score does play a role in how many black cards you can get from the activity, but it's not so bad. Truth be told, some people just don't want to spend as much time tackling certain activities with their current units, so they opt for better units that lowers the possible amount of time spent to engage with these activities. And it's perfectly valid considering that PGR is an action combat game that needs a bit more of your attention as a gacha game more so than others. But if you can already complete the content in a timely manner, you don't necessarily have to jump onto the next iteration of your team, you can focus on building another. So back to the original question. If you have Starfarer, should you roll for Epitaph? It really depends on your situation. The truth is, there's no rush to move on to the next meta. Nanami Starfarer is generally good enough for your fire team. Sure, she is nowhere near as strong as having Epitaph on your team, but again, she's actually pretty decent, especially when it comes to clearing content fast, and she is a safe pick in really hard content. I will say that at some point, perhaps you should absolutely consider having Epitaph on your account. He's just that strong. And if you are new and just got in during the BRS patch, Epitaph would be a valuable addition to your team for sure. At the very least, you can get one step closer to having one complete team. There's one last thing that's worth mentioning. In the next patch, we will have a brand new ice attacker that will be replacing Lucia Plume. And eventually, we're going to get a free ice tank that eclipses Chrome Glory. So, if you think about it, with the fact that the meta ice amplifier is also free, that means that if you get the next meta ice attacker, you'll have a full meta ice team when the new Wanshi frame is out. Besides, it's recommended that you have another team of a different element anyway. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll be rolling for the next meta ice attacker in the next patch. I'm happy with my Nanami Starfarer. Besides, as time moves on, I might happen to snag an Epitaph sometime in the future because Kuro can throw anything at us. I can wait. Same reason why I never got Vera Garnet. And I'm not a dog. Hey, I'll wait for Nanami to pick up the Charge Blade and take over. But for now, I'm worried about my ice team. It's not looking good. But perhaps we're missing the most important part of this discussion. Who cares? Meta this, meta that, you know what? Let's not forget rule number 1 in any gacha game. Roll for who you like. Yes, like and subscribe for my insurmountable wisdom. I'll be here all day. Whether it be the fun gameplay or a character you need, you should want to roll for whomever you like. Even if you're rolling for meta, it's not going to be an arduous decision to make, especially when you consider the way power creep is in this game. Some characters are still waiting to be power crept, and with a new element coming out, the line just got longer. But after talking about all of this, it really makes you think. PGR is that much of an amazing game. Here we are talking about characters that come out, and the truth is, every character gets their chance to shine. And perhaps none of this matters because it's an action combat game, where no matter who you are playing, you're going to look and feel cool taking down some bosses. However you want to approach this game, don't worry, Kuro has got you covered. So that said, take it easy and go at your own pace. After all, it's easy to build your roster, easy to build your teams, easy to decide who to roll for, and most of all, it's easy to have fun with. So, if you're not rolling for the new Watanabe, you're not alone. After all, there's so much to look forward to in PGR, even if it feels so far away. Anyway, it's time to get ready for the new update in Wuba, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Oh, by the way, for every like and subscription I get for this video, you will have more luck in snagging your very own Chameleon Wuba. Trust me, it'll work. I think it'll work.